Space. Space is an interesting concept because it's all around us when we look beyond the sky. It's all we have. More and more space. Space that goes on for an infinite amount of miles, space that our best telescopes can't even see, and space that has galaxies and planets, and probably they're filled with all different types of life. But we still lack some space. You see, this Earth is beautiful and plentiful, but it's not big enough for all of us, especially the future all of us. No matter how good Earth was this year, and it was actually very naughty in 2020, not nice, even Santa Claus can't solve the claustrophobia we will eventually feel on this planet. We've discovered philosophy and psychology and made civilizations that have structure and order. We've built large economic systems to give people opportunity, but we have also failed to recognize that we're a good species, but there have been species before us that have survived and died. We just figured out how to make Instagram so we can document pictures before our eventual collapse. Because that's what's going to happen. While we created democracy, we also created biased criminal justice systems that discriminate based on gender, race, and class, and we've incited uprisings within the masses by centralizing all the wealth to a group of few elites, and we've allowed those elites to make their wealth by using the earth as their subsidy for their oil businesses, and we've also done the worst thing a humanity could ever do. We gave David a microphone. Sorry, David. The point is, as a species, we've done amazing things, but we've also created a host of other existential problems that simply cannot be resolved on this planet. I mean, shouldn't we have solved racism or income inequality by now? If Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell can't get in a damn room together to give Americans stimulus money over a global pandemic, over something as arbitrary as politics, do you think, and I mean do you really think, we can solve global warming or poverty? That's what this debate is about. If we show you that interplanetary colonization is key to resolving most of the existential problems we have on Earth and in the future, we should then pursue allocating resources on Earth to fund those colonizing missions. Two arguments. One, we need to care about our future lives more than we care about our present lives. Alright, so the most common argument against space colonization is that resources governments would have to allocate to fund it would be better for like healthcare or poverty or things like that. Here's the thing. We don't have to make this forced choice because there are plenty of private sector industries already working on these problems. And to be honest, the private sector is probably way better at resolving those than the government, because the government should have resolved it by now. But more importantly, even if we sacrifice lives now, there are potentially billions we will save in the future. When you think about space colonization, we have to realize that our Earth is not going to be here forever. And this is really important. In fact, 4 billion years from now, our sun will burn out because it is a star, which means we won't have enough energy for photosynthesis, which means we won't be able to take photos for Instagram because we won't be able to breathe since no plants will produce oxygen, which means we die. We already have a timeline, and that's if we get to 4 billion years from now, which means we have to begin thinking about the future humans that are not here yet that will one day be alive and need a place to go when the Earth is screwed, because those people will carry out a legacy of the human race. They could be our kids' that still matter to us. Remember two things. Humans are incompetent and can't even pass a stimulus bill, so we are not solving poverty, which means the most reasonable thing we can do is hope that the private sector can solve that and focus on maintaining the human race to create a potential for future generations to survive. So if David gets up in the next speech and says, I care too much about babies in 2134 and not in 2020, here's why that argument makes no sense. The only reason he cares about babies right now is not because they are alive right now, it's because of the potentials of what their lives could become. Being physically alive means nothing if you have no potential to find any purpose. So we both are talking about human beings who share a potential to live a meaningful life, and we both care about humans pursuing happiness. He just cares about them now, I care about them in the future. That means that if there's more of them in the future, potentially billions, because we have to solve the existential catastrophe that will be our planet when it goes under, then that means on balance, I'm saving more lives by doing interplanetary colonization, which is a reason to vote for me. Second argument, the economic opportunities by space colonization will help Earth. Jeff Bezos once said that the only reason Amazon was able to create so much wealth and help so many people because industries before it, like the credit card system, the USPS, and the internet infrastructure were already in place. Those systems, they didn't know they would give birth to the behemoth that is Amazon, but the reason Bezos is investing in space exploration so much is because he thinks that the infrastructure he'll be able to build will allow 2 kids in their college dorm rooms years from now to take advantage of it and build a path to space colonization, just like he did with the internet and Amazon. And when they do that, because of resources being allocated to space now, it will open up industries and economic prosperity, just like Amazon has for millions around the world. And as humans, we need to focus on the next trends of industries that can actually have a chance to democratize wealth. The best thing we've come up with is the internet. But imagine if we had a whole new float of industries developed. The opportunities for economic success are endless, which solves the impacts David may talk about in his next speech about why we need to focus on solving problems at home. Creating new industries about interplanetary colonization gives us access to new lives on different planets and brings back money for the Earth. For example, NASA in 2019 reported that they were eyeing a nearby asteroid that contains enough gold to make everyone on Earth a billionaire. Another way to help the economy is to bring more resources to the Earth from space by asteroid mining, which comes from a result of ideologically focusing more on space. Those lead to more successes on our planet. So, I don't want you to think of this as a breakup, Earth. It's not me, it's definitely you, but we just need some space.
The first claim I want to talk about is private sectors are better at being able to solve things like poverty. Why? What evidence do you have to say that private sector is better? Not just that the government sucks right now.
Free markets and enterprises and the system of capitalism have lifted billions out of poverty. In China, in particular, it's lifted 600 million people out of poverty. Capitalism's not perfect. Free markets not perfect. But it's way better than governments who can't figure out.
No. So the reason why. So you're talking about an entire economic system, yes. But the claim you made was about private companies, not the ability for people to be able to invest. What evidence is there that a private company like, let's say, Amazon is able to solve poverty?
So the argument is Amazon provides more economic prosperity in terms of people being able to, like, for example, use their business model, sell things on Amazon, which means someone can achieve more social mobility through using that platform to achieve more economic success.
What you're telling me is
governments handing out money doesn't do anything to solve poverty.
Sure, but investing in, like, for example, poverty subsidy programs could.
I 100% agree. Our argument is the government is so incompetent they would never do that.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why private companies are better at doing that.
Well, they're not better at investing in solving poverty. They're better at giving economic opportunity.
So your argument is that there is economic opportunity available because of Amazon. Therefore, the government should not focus its
the government should. We're making a larger overarching claim. The government is so incompetent.
But this debate is obviously about a trade-off, right? You made an argument that says that money that could go to things like things like poverty should go to interplanetary colonization.
Yes, because the government has shown it can.
Got it. That requires you. Got it. That requires you to make the argument that the government should then, because if there's a limited amount of money and the government has to choose, you can't just make the claim.
I'm in agreement with you. They should choose the Mars over poverty.
Right. So my question. So if you're going to make that argument, you have to then be able to say that private companies will be able to solve poverty, right?
Yes. But that's the argument I made.
With what evidence? I'm asking you, what's the evidence? This is the debate.
I mean, so
you're just like, Amazon exists so some poor black person can sell a product.
No, Amazon is one example. Our argument is to get people out of poverty, they need to be able to make money. These large corporations that are democratized, like Instagram, for example, solve poverty to an extent.
Instagram solves got it. All right, cool.
With you posting content
we're good. Instagram solves poverty.
You need to listen to the argument because you're just saying a headline. With the ability to post content and monetize that content has never existed before. So a homeless person theoratically could be in that.
So a homeless person without service, a homeless person without service or Wi-Fi can go on Instagram and solve poverty.
I've seen UPS drivers get a phone, vlog their day-to-day life, and start making money on YouTube and get more than their average income in UPS.
All right, that's
the
ridiculous.
Government giving money won't solve it because they haven't given money.
Got it. Creates economic opportunities on Earth. Space colonization creates economic opportunities on Earth. How? It's just like
so the argument is one. For example, let's say we created a new industry of planes to get from Earth to space. That creates like millions of different separate industries in order to make those planes, and that's just one example of different industries that are created.
So your argument is just that there are new industries created, therefore there are like jobs created, but not that there are economic opportunities.
Because the government can't pass. I would love if the government passed a new Green New Deal or something. The government won't ever do that, so we need private sectors to create jobs.
Got it. So it's just they.
I'm all for the government giving out jobs. The government just won't do that, so we need private industry.
Hashtag stay home. This phrase has come to define 2020 as a year, and the way it's looking, it might become the phrase of the decade. And I love being at home. Is it because I'm lazy? Absolutely. Is it because I live comfortably? Yeah, and I'm thankful for those things. You think you're insulting me when you call me lazy, but it's music to my ears. In fact, here's a dose of reality for you. All you ambitious overachievers are going to destroy the world. In fact, you might already have. It's fine. But if I'm going to die, I'm going to die as I lived. At home. That being said, allow me to introduce you to the psycho that wants to destroy that dream for us all. Elon Musk. This African madman, yes, I said African, which just couldn't be more ridiculous, wants to perfect colonialism on a different planet because apparently we made some mistakes the first time. First things first, you know he was the kid in elementary school that made fun of you because your drawings of Mars weren't up to scale. Oh, really, Elon? So my Mars isn't proportional? Well, stick it up Uranus and tell me how the dark side of the moon feels. Second, and more importantly, do you know how hard it's going to be to get me on a spaceship? Yeah, just hop on this ship to a world that nobody knows, where it's probably going to take a bunch of extremely difficult labor in order for you to survive. I'm out. I'm definitely not going. Good luck with all of that. For people like Amit, but hopefully not for me and you. Those are just the shallow reasons why I'm not invested in this project of interplanetary colonization. But you shouldn't be either. I negate. I want you to make your decision like a rich politician, weighing the costs and benefits instead of just being extremely excited about the journey. Just because we're broke doesn't mean that you have to think broke. Think like somebody that has something to lose for the first time in your life. Contention 1. Every step of the journey requires way too much to be worth it. Let's start with the launch and infrastructure. The costs and risks are grossly underestimated. The two institutions with the biggest plan for this are NASA and Musk's SpaceX. NASA's Mars One operation has inadequate funds and no plan for what colonization would look like. SpaceX is a little further, but their plan is still ridiculous. According to Chris Baraniuk, it would cost $10 billion a ticket to send only 100 people at a time to Mars, with the hopes that someday prices could go down to $200,000, which most of you still don't have. Only a small population could go, which means most of us will still die. Then we get to the journey itself. It will take about 7 months if we're lucky, which is longer than trained astronauts spend up there, and Musk himself says a ton of people would die. Then we get to the arrival. Limited resources mean extreme rations and hard labor to make those civilizations work. On top of that, deciding rights would be next to impossible. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty specifically says outer space is not subject to national appropriation by claim of sovereign, by means of use or occupation, or by any other means. According to Adam Morton of Newsweek, this provides the danger of nuclear and biological war. Any nation party to founding a colony will arouse suspicion in its enemies that it's scheming to start and survive a war, and this makes war more rather than less likely. Contention 2. There are a ton of problems to fix here, and unlike Mars colonization, they're feasible. The first is poverty. Wealth inequity is a direct trade-off with spaceflight policy, and people have been saying this for decades. According to David Smith, the civil rights movement was marked with massive protests against space funding that provided, quote, billions for the poor and billions for the moon and pennies for the poor. It takes $12 to feed an astronaut and only $8 to feed a child, and that adds up massively in the long run. Other things like education reform, food scarcity, and more all lose funding, particularly in the US, because they come from the same budget source. Another is climate change. The overwhelming consensus of scientists is that climate change is catastrophic but manageable if we act immediately, which means now is the time to ramp up investment in climate tech like carbon capture and storage, carbon sequestration, and more. Unlike space colonization, the tech is here and works. According to Julio Friedman, senior energy research scholar at Columbia, the tech works, reduces life cycle emissions by 55 to 90%, and costs only about $40 per ton. So please, in the wake of this global pandemic, stay at home, in your house, on Earth. Thank you. Now let's talk about Amit's arguments. The first argument that Amit makes is that private sectors will be able to solve things like poverty. First, there's no evidence for this, and it's a particularly bad claim. Private sectors do not have an incentive to stop poverty, but have an incentive to manage it, because the more poor people there are, the more their product ends up being useful. So, for example, fast food companies love the fact that they're poor people because it gives them a unique space for their companies to thrive. All of Amit's arguments are about economic opportunity, easy, but they require you to have too much on the front end in order to be able to invest. Things like a cell phone, Wi-Fi, etc. Amit's claims are built about saying that you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and even if that's true, the wide consensus of most policy scholars is that it's going to take an enormous effort from both the private and public sector to solve poverty, which means that we can't be wasting money on things like interplanetary colonization. The second is Amit says that we're going to have a ton of economic opportunities. First, let's talk about this asteroid mining thing very quickly. It's absolutely ridiculous. First, it violates the OST, which is all the stuff that we said above. It's quite literally illegal. It could be the impetus for international war, and tons of scholars say that asteroid mining can uniquely cause that. Second is that there's no precedent for them to be able to mine asteroids in the first place. Third is that according to Sarah Scholes, it produces things like debris cascades because we literally have to be able to drill into rock, which increases the chance that all of us will die. So if that's the kind of economic opportunity you want, that's great. He says that it will be able to create industries. No, those industries will largely be limited to very particular people that are the front bearers of those industries. You're not going to get your average Joe that's in the middle of poverty and can't afford college in the first place to be somebody that's put on a geoengineering project to build a rocket. That's just not going to happen. The jobs he produces are probably low-level jobs like welding and mining, which are not going to be enough to get people out of poverty. Only a concerted effort by the government will be able to do so, which means that these economic opportunities are bogus and useless. Stop letting people that think they can dress tell you that you can solve poverty with things like Instagram or with the opportunities they give you. Amit is no different than the gurus that show up on YouTube, and you should reject him. I win.
Okay, I want to talk about this average Joe that you talked about. As our world is changing, and as things I've been hashtagging, like learn how to code, all this type of stuff, what is average Joe's job prospects in the future just on Earth in the next coming decades?
I'm not quite sure what you mean. Can you expound?
Your argument is like economic opportunities from interplanetary colonization don't help average Joe. How does anything currently on Earth help average Joe?
I mean, argument is that nothing on Earth right now helps, but that with significant funding for poverty relief,
right?
We can't.
So basically, you're saying the government has to give average Joe an income per year to get him out of poverty.
I mean, I haven't defended a UBI, but I don't think that'd be so bad. This is what I'm confused about. I don't think that'd be so bad.
I don't think that would be bad either.
That sounds dope, actually.
It seems like the government wouldn't do that, but
that's the point of the debate, right? The point of the debate is what should the government do, not what will the government do.
But it seems like average Joe can get a job at Boeing and do welding and mining to make airplanes. If we made new space rockets, materials, all that stuff, and average Joe got a job making the tires for those rockets.
What is this, George Lopez?
No, I don't even get that reference. That seems like can you explain the reference?
It's a show where they literally worked at
okay, yeah.
an airplane factory just making
The point
things.
is, it seems like there's a potential for average Joe to have some productivity in a new industry. Like, in the future on Earth, what is average Joe going to do, especially when AI takes over?
Probably work at Boeing. The question is whether or not they will be able to, because it's your argument that Boeing will never have a contract again if we don't do the F.
So then I'm generations down, like this person.
Yeah, Boeing's still going to be a thing. Your argument is just that you create a new project for Boeing to engage.
So I guess my question is, why are these industries elitist, which is basically what you've made?
My argument is that what you're talking about is giving someone access to a single project, not giving someone access to like a long-standing industrial.
But David, if the entire planet was colonizing other planets, how would there not be billions of things to do?
First, we've read a bunch of evidence that says that colonization will fail. So
yeah, like that matters. But if that were to happen, this is just for the jobs.
If that would happen, requires you to first respond to that.
How would there not be so many jobs to do a task like that? Is my question.
Because you wouldn't give that. I'm confused about what you're saying. So your argument is that because there's going to be a bunch of stuff that there's just going
to get to Mars, there's a lot of jobs and responsibilities.
That's not the question, because you're talking about solving unemployment, not solving poverty.
But so this goes back to the UBI thing. So your argument is just the government should just give people money because Joe is not marketable, as per what you've said.
I think that would be a great example of what these subsidy programs could look like. I've not defended
a subsidy program though, like just giving money. Is that your argument?
Sometimes,
in the future. All
right, here's a great example. Right. You've made an argument about why it's possible for us to be able to give money to people, or why it's possible for people to be able to market based on having access to limited resources like Instagram, right? The question is, how do they get a base level of capital in order to be able to do that? A cash infusion would be a perfect way to do that. So by your standards, if we gave Joe the money instead of investing it in something else, Joe could then end up on Instagram for some reason, and Joe could end up being successful.
But wouldn't that require Joe to do that? Your argument is just the government has to give him.
Yeah, they have to give him the cash infusion so he can do that.
What about for someone who's homeless?
You made the argument that homeless people did this.
But I'm using your example. Seems like a couple $1,000. Doesn't seem like a house.
I'm using your example. Your example was if you're homeless, you can still do this. It's not my fault you decided to say that.
I just want to ask one more question. This thing about NASA and SpaceX that won't have a lot of funding. Why does that not mean if we create more companies that have this more goal that the costs and stuff goes down and we get more funding? Like just economies of scale.
I mean, what companies are you talking about?
Well, Blue Origin exists. More startups are starting to come up. Like, if we allocate funding ideologically to these missions, won't more startups join and lower the cost?
Well, first of all, most of the funding that ends up getting allocated to national institutions that end up doing this. There's also like a limited amount of money that we can invest in,
reduce the cost of getting to space?
I mean, probably, but if you reduce the cost from $10 billion to $9 billion, ask which member of our audience thinks they can afford $9 billion.
Okay.
Like, how you think you're going to reduce the cost from $10 billion to something manageable?
Okay. Let's take a break from the debate. Talk about what's going on. Very interesting topic. Very kind of timely, because I guess we have a little bit of a debate with Elon getting a lot of success in terms of funding his operations.
I think this is the second time we've talked about Elon on the show.
Yeah, so Elon, we're definitely going to tweet this to Elon because we need that retweet to his followers. So hopefully he retweets this episode.
I just want him to know I'm genuinely he's just super interesting.
He's very interesting.
It's just in a very scary way.
Yes, in a very, very scary way. I think the biggest thing about Elon is there's a lot of issues, I guess, with whatever he's trying to do, but the thing we cannot deny is over the past 20 years, he's made electric vehicles normalized, and that's going to do way more than I think anything the government has done to stop climate change.
Interesting.
To some extent. Now, I know there's a lot of counter-arguments to electric vehicles. I just feel like we're on the right path with Tesla that has inspired BMW and Mercedes to join and all that stuff. So I think it's interesting. What do you think about space colonization?
No, I'm not. Here's the thing. I'm not ready to risk my life. Elon Musk had they actually had him do like a interview or whatever.
Yeah.
And they were like, "So, what are your thoughts about the risk?" And he was just like, "Are you prepared to die? Then you're a candidate to hop on my ship." That was the pitch. The pitch was, "Are you prepared to die?" Yes, and I was like,
"I'm not doing that." Yeah, I have enough purpose and meaning on Earth. That's the thing, bro. If you really trying to go to Mars, you really have nothing else you can do on Earth, which means you have to be so rich and so powerful that you're bored on this planet. Because it's hard to be bored, right? There's a trillion things to do.
Yeah.
You literally have to be like, I need excitement from going on a 7th-month journey and risking my life. That's different than skydiving.
That's a different type of adrenaline junkie. Like, that's wild.
Different type of level of wealth too, which is why it's kind of hard for me to sort of make this argument that.
Oh, it solves poverty.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I couldn't really say much about this. Obviously, Instagram.
It's gonna be a real conversation about what it means to sacrifice poor people later on.
Yeah, Instagram doesn't solve poverty, but I want to get your response on this argument because I don't think you responded to too much in the last speech, which I'm going to talk about. Is this whole future lives argument? I think this is kind of like a utilitarian thing. Yeah. If there's millions of people in the future that we're not thinking about, unborn people. Outside of the debate, ethically, how would you think of this?
So I've seen this played out so many different times, and there are people that I've seen do it that I'm just like, y'all are ridiculous. But I do genuinely think that we need a concern for like future generations.
But do you personally think it matters if they're not alive? Like your grandkids' kids, do you care about them?
I am detached from them a little bit, but I would like to see my lineage, or I would like to think that my lineage thrives and exists.
Do you think we have this like internal desire to want? Like I kind of don't know if I should care about my grandkids' kids.
All right,
I'm never gonna see them.
So, but okay,
I'm just gonna be a reason they're alive.
Yeah, I mean,
is that enough for me to care about them?
I mean, someone had to care about you.
No, but think about billions of years ago. We all came from like did that person have to care about us hundreds of thousands of years from then?
I mean,
which is what I'm talking about
in the future.
Well, I don't think they had an image of. So here's the thing. I don't think you think that far, but you do somehow think if somebody told you that your line is gonna stop here,
right?
It doesn't matter where somebody points and says here, you'll be sad.
Why?
I don't know. I think it's evolutionary. I think that we have an internal care to see.
So it seems like you're saying an existential crisis is our biggest concern.
But at the same time, I know people they're like, I don't want kids. So why is it that we in particular care about
My argument is, why do we care about saving humanity? so far into the future.
I think it's almost, I'm sorry to interrupt,
No.
I think it's almost a little bit like religion in a way, that it gives us some sort of meaning and purpose, because for a lot of people, like, understanding God is just way too big for them, but understanding the fact that you had ancestors and you have people ahead of you gives you some sense of purpose that's beyond just you.
Maybe it's just me, but I don't care about like future generations.
He's like, man, I don't care about
Maybe
my
it's because I believe in like
grandkids, kids.
absurdism, but I really don't. I'm never gonna see them. They're not gonna care about me.
I think it's the closest thing to God.
They might if
It's the closest thing to God.
if you're successful and you know you live through history.
they're gonna benefit off my success. They ain't do shit. Like
but they saw you. They care about you very much.
no, they
Hey,
don't. Yo, my grandkids,
great grandpa Amit
You
set
never
us.
think about your ancestors?
I've never thought of my grandfather's dad like once.
I have. I've thought of my ancestors a lot.
Because I don't
I
know
have
them.
too.
So like,
That's a big thing. Low key, there are so many people that I've talked about, or that I've talked with, that have made me think about ancestry as a concept that matters. In fact,
my thing
one
is
of-
if
one of my
we
friends-
don't have any material attachment to it, whether it's through photos or whatever, like it's just an ideology of the ancestors.
But there's something beautiful about that. So I'll give you an example, right? One of our mutual friends has like a new business that they like a
I
candle
know what
business
you're
called
talking
an
about, yeah.
Ancestors Touch, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, why is this name so good? Like, why do I care so much about this? I don't even like candles like that. I was like, but why do I care about this so much? And I was just like, there's something unique about the concept of ancestry that I think. And I think there's something weird about that play with that, and then something that withers away as you set it on fire.
that's actually really cool branding.
I think is really cool.
That's a dope ass concept.
That's
Yeah.
a good debate to have. Should we care?
Yeah, look, should we care about our
generations?
Dude, wait.
Or should
or
we care
ans-
about our ancestors?
Yeah, that could be alright.
That could be a debate.
Future episode.
That's
Yeah.
a debate.
Oh, so here's another thing that I wanted to talk about. So you have this thing about asteroid mining.
Yes, I do.
That I think is
I think
interesting.
you have a little bit of research on that, correct?
Well, yeah.
David, for context, David debated competitively last year, and he had a topic all about space.
Yeah.
So basically, there's a lot of reasons why asteroid mining is bad.
Well, yeah, and there's a ton of stuff that's about why it's good. But my favorite, I just wanted to share a story about asteroid mining that I think is dope. So apparently, NASA tried to land like a satellite to look at an asteroid called Eros.
Okay.
But this dude, I guess like in 2001, he filed paperwork to claim Eros as his own.
You can do that. Yeah. You can
Yeah,
do that, yeah.
so
Like stars and shit.
so when NASA like landed a satellite, he wrote a letter to NASA that was like, excuse me, nobody paid me a parking fee. You're on my property.
That's crazy.
And then NASA
bro.
was like, we're not paying you.
Yo, property rights have transcended space and time.
Which is weird because the world is always moving. So
Yeah,
what
like,
is
no-
the space above you?
It makes you really realize that property rights are just a manufactured concept that humans have created that has done a lot of good, I think, but still, it's like, it's not real. Like, it's
Yeah.
not really my phone, like, at the end of the day.
So here's
Right,
the
that's why I'm
question.
taking it.
Why would you
Like-
take my phone?
Because I want it. It looks good. Have you seen mine? It's all types
We
of
have the
crack.
same phone.
It's all types of crack.
My
though.
phone's cracked here, too. You need a new computer, though. I'll
that's
take my
true.
computer. Go ahead.
So here's a question. If we do colonize Mars, who has control over it? Who
And
has
that's
the
what we will
property-
talk
whose
about
property rights?
on the next break from the debate. Stay tuned. All right, let's get back to the debate.
Yo, we were so.
Yeah, I don't like. I think European food is probably the worst food.
Yeah, I'm going Italian.
Flavor, bro.
Going-
Italian food is actually. I mean,
I'm
that's
going,
food.
I'm going Italian. I hate it.
I love it. Look, the sun's gonna die in 4 billion years. I don't know if the Earth is gonna get to the point to witness the sun dying in 4 billion years because it seems like we have a bunch of problems on Earth right now. There is an argument that David did not respond to in his last speech, which is that we are on a timeline as a species and on a planet and as a planet, which means this is not a question of if we should do interplanetary colonization. This is simply a question of when is the right time to do that. And I think that time is now, based upon the problems that we have and the fact that we've seen the government is incompetent and can't actually make good decisions with the resources that they have. Every argument David made in his last speech talked about why there's some problems with interplanetary colonization and why there's a lot of things we have to solve on Earth, without answering the fact that one day we will have to solve the problems of going off of Earth because the Earth will be gone. I'm going to spend a lot of time on this because I want to make this clear. If we're here 4 billions of years from now, which we probably wouldn't have solved poverty by then, we will have to do something, which means we should probably start focusing well in advance of those 4 billion years so we have the infrastructure ready to actually resolve these fundamental problems. I'm going to talk about some of David's arguments and then go back to my case. His first argument was that we need to look to the trade-off in the journey and that NASA and SpaceX are the only main two organizations and there's just not a lot of funding for this. A couple responses. One, as more companies start to form, we're going to have more funding. For example, Blue Origin, SpaceX, NASA, and other startups that hopefully will start as a result of the progress that they're making, like SpaceX launching 60 Starlink satellites into space that are giving more internet to rural areas across the entire planet. Those are good things as a result of investing in this type of space infrastructure, which is a positive byproduct of interplanetary colonization, because we made an argument in the last speech that ideologically our attention shifts to showing how we can use space to benefit the problems that we have on Earth, which is an argument David just didn't respond to. This means that even though they're less funded, governments should come together and do more funding. David says this can lead to more war and people will die because there's like some international treaties. Well, guess what? Treaties are just things that we sign. We shouldn't make new treaties. When we make new treaties, we can discover that the entire planet can come around the idea, because we are ideologically aligned to colonize other planets, to actually be able to make a difference and have new agreements, which is a good thing. He then says that it's too expensive and a lot of people are going to die and it's like a risky process. Like, yeah, it's risky. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's not going to happen a billion years from now if we start a billion years from now. It's going to happen slowly over time, which will reduce the cost because just economies of scale, more people working on stuff, which means the cost gets lower, and it'll become less risky. It's not that it's not risky. It's not that there's not a trade-off. It's a question of, look, the Earth's going to die. We have to do something eventually, and this is the best place to start. His final argument was that we have to fix problems on Earth. Well, why haven't we fixed problems on Earth? Like, he's talking about how we need to fix climate change through carbon sequestration and all this stuff. Why haven't we invested in that? Why haven't we done that? Why did we get out of the Paris deal? It's because humans are too incompetent to realize that we're not going to be able to solve those problems, or we just don't care about them. And quite frankly, I can't blame you, because poverty, climate change, all of these threats don't affect everyone on a day-to-day basis, which is why we become desensitized to these problems. You know how we don't get desensitized? When we realize that our entire Earth is going to die one day and we are literally not going to have anywhere to go. That's something where you have to get a little bit more creative with. And because we're so desensitized to the problems that we've had for hundreds of years that governments have not been able to resolve, we need to start focusing on other things to get us to other solar systems so that we can have interplanetary colonization, which is a really, really good thing. Back to our case. David didn't respond to a huge argument we made that sort of answers all of the other arguments he made, which is that we need to care about millions of people who are not born yet. Remember, David wants to solve climate change and poverty for the people that are here. Why? Because he wants those people to have a good life. Well, you can't discriminate against someone who's alive and someone who will be alive in the future, because that person will also want to have a good life. In 2100, 2200, there will be babies, which means those babies are not more valuable than babies in 2020. There is no logic he has explained for why that makes sense. Those babies need a place to go. They need an Earth, or they need a planet, which means we should invest in those people. Here's the tiebreaker for this argument. There's going to be more of those people in the future, which means in terms of just a numbers argument, if we save a billion people versus saving 500 million people, that's a good thing, because that's 500 more lives with 500 more potentials. This is a dropped argument that David just didn't respond to, which is a reason why it's good. He says the private infrastructure can't solve poverty. They're a lot better at it than governments. He makes a pseudo UBI argument that says, oh, the government should just give money to people. That doesn't solve the fact that people don't have something sustaining for them to be able to make a business out of or get economic prosperity. New industries, from colonizing planets and doing a lot of things to colonize those planets, creates long-term sustaining jobs, just like the internet has created millions of new jobs and opportunities. That's an argument for why it's good. His final argument says the average Joe won't be able to do this and these industries are elitist. At the end of the day, the average Joe is not marketable in 2020, which means if anything, if we can create new industries that democratize power to people like the average Joe with training and opportunities and the ability for them to make things through welding and mining for space colonization, then that's a good thing for the average Joe. The final thing he says is there's more debris. There's already enough debris in the planet right now. The risks of actually solving the fact that the Earth is going away outweighs the fact that there's going to be more debris.
Okay, so let's talk about some of this stuff in the context of in the context of like the infrastructure being ready and us being able to create more funding. Explain to me how funding creation works. You seem to have just stated a general economic principle and been like, it applies here too.
Yeah, so the reason like SpaceX and Blue Origin gets funding from NASA and organizations like that and collaborations is because they've seen that they're effective, which means the dollars are there to allocate to them. More startups that have more results get more funding from government.
Okay, so
there's an ROI. So
my question is, what happens if? So your argument is that NASA would give a bunch of funding to like Blue Origin.
They already have.
Yeah, so you're
Blue Origin, but
but like let's list all the companies, right? Let's presume.
I only know two: SpaceX and Blue Origin.
SpaceX, Blue Origin, and all the new startups, right? But NASA would give money to each of these companies
if
right?
they are showing productive.
So if they're showing productive progress, NASA would give money to each of these companies, right?
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. Next argument. You make an argument about or not really an argument, but just a question. Why haven't we invested in any of these things?
Yes.
Isn't this debate about whether or not we should?
Yeah, I get it's a question of should, but in the question of moral obligations, we also have to look to practical things that have happened.
Why is it not practical to say the government would invest?
Because why haven't they not done it over hundreds of years? Like, we could have solved poverty by now by raising taxes to 80%. That would have been an easy way to solve poverty. We haven't done it because governments are incompetent and human beings are selfishly interested.
Yeah, right.
The argument here is that because of self-interest, space colonization is more possible.
Cool. Sure, I get the selfish interest part. So now, since you've said people are self-interested,
people compose the government.
Yeah, I believe you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Let's talk about the question of who gets to go to Mars. Will all of us get to go?
I don't know.
Will all of those beautiful babies in 2100 get to live?
David,
will it be divided based on who has resources?
Over the next 100 or 200 years, if we democratize it and get the cost...
How do we democratize?
By having more industries and more funding, to the point where hopefully those babies will be able to do that.
Yeah, my question...
building space colonies on...
Yeah, my question is about how, right? So now we build a space colony that... Actually, fine, who owns it?
Whatever company started it.
So whatever company started.
Yes, so now that's the best solution we have.
So now Elon Musk gets to determine the floor for who gets to go, right?
No, Elon Musk gets to hopefully lower the price, just like a Tesla lower from $100,000 to $35,000, so more people can afford those electric vehicles.
So your argument is that Elon Musk would then lower the cost from 10...
Yes, because he will make money from it. That's how a business works.
That's great. So now from 10 billion to what?
David, I don't know.
It costs $10 billion.
Argument is, hold on, first of all.
That's literally...
Yeah, I agree with... I'm not questioning your research. I'm just saying, we're talking about hundreds of years from now. I don't think 10 billion will even have the same value hundreds of years from now. So this arbitrary number, it'll be expensive. Hopefully it will start going down. You can't rest on it.
I just want to get this clear. So I just want to get it clear
hopefully
that
it'll be $1.
Right. I want to get it close that the crux of your argument is about hope.
Yeah, because when you're trying to solve an existential problem, you need some hope.
Mm-hmm. We have hope, just sheer hope. Got it.
Through practical infrastructure of space companies. That gives us hope, yes. That's why we launched Starlink, 60 satellites over the past 2 years into space that now rural places have internet. That started with a vision, a belief, and then Elon's beautiful execution.
My genuine favorite part about debate is when people get so bogged down in the little stuff that they don't answer the biggest and most significant arguments here. Amit's best argument is that we need to care about all of these future generations, but that requires those future generations to be able to exist in the first place, which requires that they don't get evaporated in a nuclear war or destroyed by asteroid and debris cascades, both of which are arguments that Amit did not answer. The treaties argument. Amit's best response is treaties are just some things we sign. There's no reason why that matters. Well, here's first and foremost, try violating your contract at work and let's see how quickly you get fired. There are clearly consequences for violating these agreements, but when you violate international treaties, they can legitimately spark wars, which is the argument that we made about the Outer Space Treaty. We've had several instances where we've come extremely close in the context of things like anti-satellite technology, etc., and powers have declared that space colonization is something they would legitimately be willing to go to war for. So tell me, how many of those babies in 2100 have parents that can survive a nuclear war between multiple countries? The second argument that Amit concedes is this debris cascade stuff. Amit says that there's nothing that outweighs the debris existing because there's already debris. Yes, but that debris does not cascade right now, particularly because we have a manageable amount. But when we end up having to drill into several rocks, Sarah Skoll says it in particular particular makes it possible for debris to get worse because it crashes into things like satellites fairly easily. All of these are examples of how you would make the world fundamentally worse for all of those babies. Now, the last argument that we have to really deal with here is this question of poverty, and we'll talk about it briefly because there's not much that Amit says in response. The first argument that Amit makes is that we have other problems that we need to solve, and that these private institutions would be able to solve them more. One is that all those arguments rest upon being able to say that space colonization will be successful. We have several responses. First, Amit's argument is that we would be able to fund a bunch of different institutions. That's the problem with the funding mechanism we have right now. It's that a bunch of different institutions are being funded and that there's no cohesive unit in order to be able to produce this. I.e., if you give like $6 billion to Blue Origin and you give like $5 million to SpaceX, but it takes $60 billion, the fact that you're splitting the pool horizontally instead of organizing it vertically is particularly the reason why space colonization will not work. Second, Amit has just conceded that there's no scaling up for all the portions that will be devastating. The fact there's so much that has to go into things like infrastructure means that it's likely to fail in the first place. Meanwhile, all the examples that we have given about good things that happen actually work. The poverty stuff. Amit's great on talking about why poverty itself doesn't matter or why poverty won't be resolved regardless in a million years. First and foremost, yes, Amit is right that there are a bunch of things we could have done to solve poverty. I feel like I said something else, though. Oh, yeah, I had a conversation about climate change that Amit just did not answer. There's a whole contention about the technology that we can invest in. Amit says, well, why haven't we invested in all these things? It's because people are stupid or because people are self-interested. Yeah, our argument is that we definitely should be investing in all of those things and that they show more promise now than they did 20 years ago. The tech has been innovated now, which makes it the right time for us to invest and makes it profitable, which means that capitalism would also affirm investing in that technology now. It solves the only argument he has, which is this ecological crisis thing. Amit has conceded that a majority of the scientific community agrees and concedes that climate change is manageable if we act right now, which means that yes, Amit might be right that we can't solve poverty, but the only thing that makes it so that we won't live to see the 4 billion years, etc., is whether or not whether or not the Earth dies as a result of climate change. Our evidence says that we can solve it by investing in the right technology. That right technology is not rockets to go to Mars, but is carbon sequestration tech. There's a trade-off between those two things because scientific innovation comes from the exact same place that you would need to fund elsewhere. This is a clear game over. All of Amit's arguments are about poverty. Those arguments we'll concede don't get solved, but all the existential problems that we face can only be solved once we stop putting money in stupid things like colonization. Especially because if the sun goes out in 4 billion years, Mars will die too.
All right, I want to talk about this argument about funding institutions vertically, horizontally. Can you explain this like geometrical analogy?
Yeah, it's not geometrical or an analogy, but it's directional and it's.
What is the argument, David?
Okay, yeah. So the argument is that the reason why no one can muster up enough to be able to make a concerted effort to go to space is because we have all of our things allocated to different pools, right? So obviously these companies aren't going to want to work together because, as you said, whoever makes it there first is who gets the rights to it.
Okay, so here's my question. I get they're not cohesive because they're competing against each other. Mm-hmm. Why isn't that competition just good? Because it's going to drive them to more innovation? Which is why the funding
because the
horizontal is good?
Well, because the evidence clearly says that we need a concerted and cohesive effort to be able to overcome the structural problems that make it so that we can't go to space.
But then we're not going to have companies because that just goes against the whole nature of capitalism.
Yeah, if it's about literally saving the Earth, we've made an argument that we shouldn't rely on companies because they don't care about that. They care about profit.
Right, but as we know, profit drives good things.
You do not have a single argument that says that.
David, that's just capitalism. When companies are motivated by profit, they have
and your argument.
Like Instagram has Reels because TikTok is making money.
You place way too much faith in the ability. Yes, and it's real easy for Instagram to compete with TikTok. It's not easy for companies to be like, we're just gonna go to Mars because our capitalist system works.
But the logic
that logic can't be scaled that high.
You realize, and this is actually true, Blue Origin just got a contract to allow them to get satellites into Earth because of SpaceX Starlink satellite system.
Right, and the fact that we are funding multiple different institutions means that we are slowing progress, not speeding it up.
All right,
what would have happened if we put that same amount of money into SpaceX instead of into Blue Origin?
Well, I think
SpaceX
only
probably
one
would have gone further.
No, I think only one company would have had the money, which is not good for diversification. But
Right, but the point of this is not
I
for
have a
the
new
company
question.
to succeed. It's for us to live.
Let's talk about the treaties argument. Again, I understand your point. If you violate a treaty, it can cause a lot of bad things.
Right.
If it's an existential crisis, why can't we create treaties where, for example, if the asteroid's mined and we have $1 billion to help everyone on Earth, that means everyone on Earth could have that money.
Everyone. So
why can't we have a treaty where
all
everyone
7
signs up?
billion people get $1 billion.
That's the extent of the asteroid. It's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, all 7 billion people get $1 billion.
If we mine the asteroid from that, if we mine the gold.
I'm
from
sorry.
that
Are you
asteroid-
saying $1 billion per person?
Yes.
You think that there's
That
$1
is the
billion
article you
per
cited.
person on an asteroid?
Yes, David. I mean, you've done enough research on this. I thought you
Yeah,
know, it's called a Psychic 6. That's the name of the asteroid.
Yeah,
Here's my
there's
point.
not.
Here's my point. Okay, you can look at the research. You can look it up.
Got it.
Anyone who's watching. The point is,
Also-
if that much prosperity existed,
Okay,
why wouldn't the world come together and be like, yeah, let's sign a new treaty?
For the same reason you said nobody's coming together, because everyone is self-interested.
But a
Russia
billion?
Yes.
A billion?
Yes. Russia wants that.
Russia finna come to the table and get rid of
No, Russia would want that money for themselves. And the bigger argument here is that all these powers have said that space colonization violates
Why?
because the text of it says that no national administration can claim outer space.
So
They can only claim individual
why can't
property they
just
have on outer
renege?
space.
Like, why can't they renegotiate? and
Because if they renege, they go to war because
Wait, why?
everyone
Why?
else does. Because everyone else has said so. I don't
I'm
have.
so confused. If there's trillions
You're
of
asking-
dollars
you
of
are-
resources,
you
why
are-
won't the world come
you-
together?
You are asking me why Vladimir Putin says that he doesn't want to work with the United
No,
States.
here's
don't
my
know.
question.
I don't care.
Here's my
But I'm not
question.
ready to die because of it. That's just
So
it.
why did the world come together in 2015 and have, outside of North Korea and I think one other country, everyone signed the Paris Climate Agreement?
And then we pulled out immediately after.
The United States. I get it, because Trump anomaly. My point is...
Actually, a bunch of powers
Wait,
also have not
David,
met their
my point
goals.
is, it
in
seems
that.
like we've been able to come together, even if it was symbolic, to at least come together and sign a new idea of what the world could look like. Why can't that happen for space?
Because the whole point of it is that there's nobody that's profiting and making individual claims off of there not being carbon in the air. There's money on the line for space colonization, which is why they would not come together, because
There's
they're
a
all
lot of money
self-interested.
in the climate.
Right, and you think, and they're selfish enough to want all of it.
Okay. Let's take a break from the debate and talk about this debate. What are your thoughts so far, David?
First of all, are you okay?
I'm good. This is just a fun, interesting conversation.
Oh man.
I guess let's talk about this. What I was gonna say this sort of expand on the last exchange we had of like countries coming together. I don't think it's possible for countries to come together.
Yeah,
I think we barely came together for the Paris climate thing.
we came together for the Paris climate thing when, like, it took scientists a good 40 years of begging.
Yep.
It took like
Yep.
Bangladesh going underwater.
So basically, this means we're just screwed. Basically, this means I think we're admitting right now in this podcast we are absolutely screwed.
Yeah.
Like if we have an existential crisis where we have to leave Earth, there's no way.
I'm trying to make enough content and money to live a good. My hope is that maybe I live a good life and then I can pick the place that floods the least. That's really where I'm at.
Yo,
Dude, so like
that's actually funny.
it's messed up. So I spent like half of the summer learning Dutch, and then
you know Dutch.
yeah, some. I'm still learning, but I spent half the summer learning Dutch, and then like I got to like a unit on Dutch culture, and they were like the entire country is in the lowlands. I was like, wait, so when this climate change thing happens, does that mean that? Because I was like, man, this Netherlands place looks great. I might want to go there. And then they were like,
screwed, right?
They were like, basically, the Netherlands is going to flood immediately. And I was like,
So is Miami.
I was like, oh well.
So who rules Mars?
Yeah, so that was the
Colonize
thing.
it.
Nobody rules Mars.
No, but that's an interesting question. How would we figure out?
We fight a war, and whoever lives rules Mars. That's my argument.
That's why you win. That's why it causes war.
Yeah, why are you saying that's why he wins? Like,
Because I'm right.
the debate is not over yet.
I mean, theoretically,
That's the
you
interpretation.
could, but like, I don't know, man. Look, dude, we're gonna die. Like, the question
Yeah,
is,
see, I tried to take the fatality thing and spin it, but you're kind of like re-spinning it.
yeah. Did you like that I didn't talk about poverty at all?
Yeah, I like your I was gonna curse, but let me not. Your aggravating self literally just like pseudo collapsed this argument and went for this. So again, if you've been listening to the podcast, this is what you have to do in a conversation, in a debate. You have to find the most meaningful impact and go for that when you're trying to get the audience to agree with whatever you're trying to convince them with. So poverty doesn't matter anymore, apparently. Now it matters that this treaty thing is going to trigger a nuclear war.
It's war versus just colonization.
Do you think the richest man in the country or in the world gets to own Mars?
No, I think there will be a revolt before that happens.
By who?
Yeah.
Like
They're on Earth.
By the masses.
But if the masses are on Earth and the person that is
Maybe they
claiming
wouldn't let him get to
colonization is
the
on
spaceship.
Mars, you think they're gonna take his spaceship?
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen.
Jeff Bezos.
Give me your
He's gonna
spaceship.
rule Mars.
Could you imagine Grand Theft Spaceship?
What? Yo, Grand Theft Spaceship?
That's the next game.
That's the next game.
Because Grand Theft Auto, they took everything.
They took everything.
Planes, boats. The
I
only
remember
thing they haven't done is
so many people on
spaceships.
Grand Theft Auto when I was like 10 years old. I should not have had that game. Okay, but what was I saying? Jeff Bezos, the thing I said in my first speech, he actually did have a keynote he was giving where he was like, the reason I'm in space is because people who invested in the internet gave me Amazon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, I want that to exist for the next generation. He knows he's going to die. He knows he's not seeing space.
Yeah.
So I kind of think that's a beautiful thing though, right? Or do you think it's an evil thing because he's not giving his money to poverty, he's giving his money to future generations of space so that 2 kids years from now in their dorm room?
Also, we have to take into account the fact that there's one profit for him in space.
Yes,
but
that is true.
that was also just like it was a mission statement. Like anybody that's engaging in a venture will try to make their mission statement as attractive as possible. So
Right.
so him saying I want to pave the way for the next generation is
branding.
Yeah, I
thought he was being sincere, but I don't know.
I don't know. I here's the thing, right? We give people like Bezos a lot of flack because rich and whatever.
Yeah.
I am not gonna stop giving people like Bezos flack. Because
or Musk or anything.
yeah, or yeah, but like it's hard to tell and hard to like test whether or not they're being genuine or not.
Yeah.
Like once you have that, somebody said this before. They're like, how much money does it take until you lose a soul? And do you lose a soul?
Yo,
like
that could be a debate as well.
I don't know if he's soulless.
I mean, I understand why people say he has no soul, but he's given a lot of people opportunities on Amazon. Like, there's third-party sellers make like 60% of the website. People make a living on Amazon.
I
Which
guess.
is a big deal. Like, they wouldn't have been able to do that without a platform. Just like he wouldn't have been able to do that without the internet. Just like we would not be able to go to Mars without SpaceX. And so I don't know.
Don't extend your arguments.
I don't know, man. It's
It's tough.
interesting. I just think Earth is such a hard thing to solve right now. The problems we have, that we should focus on these problems.
One thing you guys didn't talk about at all is like other life forms.
We don't care.
Would that be ethical?
I didn't think the alien
So
thing would like. I don't.
I've had this debate before. I had somebody that was like, we should literally just waste them. Somebody,
That's
like,
so
kill them?
messed up.
yeah,
Kill aliens?
somebody was like, if they exist, they're gonna be gelatinous life forms. Basically, it's like
We don't know.
They're
We
like-
don't
they're-
know what they would be.
question: what if aliens were tasty? This is weird, but
And we will answer that when the debate ends. Let's get back to the what the fuck? What, they taste like Jello because they're gelatin. Okay, back to the debate. There's 2 things I need to win in this speech. 1, that nuclear war is not going to happen for whatever ridiculous extrapolation David talked about. And 2, climate change isn't going to be solved, especially when we live in a capitalist economy. If I win these 2 things, which are the only 2 impacts David went for in his last speech, then we will be able to win that the existential crisis of interplanetary colonization, which is something we have to do at one point, 4 billion years from now or not, is more beneficial to solve. But before I talk about those 2 things, let's just do a little overview. Apparently, David does not care about the average Joe because he just kicked out of him in his last speech. We do care about you, Joe, and we will create industries for you, Joe, so that you can have a cup of Joe in the morning and actually get to work and get some job done. We care about you, and the industries of interplanetary colonization are going to be able to create jobs or training opportunities for you. If you're not marketable right now, there is not a guarantee that if we don't do anything that involves new heavy industries, which is industrial labor, that doesn't require that much heavy intellectual capacity, that you won't have a job currently. Which means, if anything, we solve poverty because outside of the government giving random subsidies, we will create economic prosperity to actually allow more people to succeed. By the way, there was a lot of unknown to this. We didn't know people would become millionaires off of Amazon, but it happened. Embrace the unknown and vote for us. More opportunities in space leads to more economic prosperity, which can solve the unknowns of poverty that apparently the government just doesn't think they know anything about. Two things. Nuclear war won't happen. David's argument is that treaties will be violated and that will cause countries to go to war. Our argument about the Paris Climate Change Agreement is really good. Even though it was symbolic, it showcased that countries have the ability to come together and actually make a decision that shows there will be some change. And emissions have decreased from some of the worst countries like China and India that were polluting at a heavy rate because of more infrastructure being involved to create renewable energy. It's not perfect, but it shows that if there are asteroids with literally billions of or trillions of dollars of gold in them, that can make everyone on Earth a billionaire, which the research suggests that is. You can do your own research if you don't believe me. That means there might be a world in which countries come together, especially if their fate of their humanity is on the line, and solve these problems. So you shouldn't deal with this fear-mongering David's doing that we're just going to have a nuclear war when, like, we should have had it in the Cuban Missiles Crisis. We've gotten close before. If there's actual prosperity, maybe that's not going to happen. Second argument, climate change isn't being solved, is our argument. His argument is that we need to invest in resources. One, we should have invested in those resources by now. This is not a bad argument, because if climate change is so bad and we have all the technology, why aren't we investing in it? It shows you that humans are too self-interested. Oil companies are not going away. Do you have a trip to Malibu next weekend? Guess what? You're going to get on a plane, even during coronavirus, and release greenhouse gas emissions because you care about partying in Malibu. We don't care enough about the Earth, which is why we need to care about a different planet that we can go to, because apparently we just don't care enough about the Earth. Which leads me to my final argument. There's future generations we need to protect. David says our funding is bad because it's horizontal and not vertical. No, give money to as many people as we can. Let them come up with creative solutions. Give humans the freedom to actually be able to come up with a solution, and let the babies in 2100 exist. We need to have a plan for those people because they're going to exist. And as of now, the only plan we have is maybe the government gives them some money. Maybe we can kind of stop climate change, or maybe Joe just never gets a job in the future.
Well, it looks like the one thing that Amit and I can agree on is that we're all going to die. The question is, when do we die? How do we die? And is it gruesome? And in our world, it is not. Because in our world, we managed to solve or at least mitigate the existential thing that is producing a crisis for the world right now. Now, for all that Amit says about there being 4 billion years and us going to die, but if we survive as long as the sun, you'll be happy. And more importantly, you'll be dead, so you won't have to worry about it. Sorry, but the key question is, do we end up dying in a nuclear war in the process, or in debris cascades? Now, just off the rip, Amit did not answer the debris cascades thing at all in the last speech. And our evidence says that those debris cascades produce way more risk of there being a bunch of horrible things going down. Things like satellites collapsing, things like military organizations thinking that they are under attack, which increases the risk of war, as well as just debris causes legitimate death when it enters our atmosphere. All of those are examples of things that can happen to legitimately kill tons of people. But the biggest thing is a nuclear war. Let's answer Amit's arguments about the nuclear war. He says nuclear war just won't happen and we've gotten close. First of all these responses are new. He had absolutely no response, and there's no reason why you should give him that. Second, yes, they will. Our evidence says in particular that these parties value space exploration because they don't want anyone to set up in space. If a country is able to establish a power in space, it could be seen as an opportunity for them to start and survive a war, both by having a safe haven and a place to move away after the effects of war. This launches or creates an incentive for preemptive strikes from other countries who feel scared by this. This is not answered by any of the other stuff, because all the other stuff was the principle of mutually assured destruction checked all the other stuff, like the Cuban Missile Crisis. It is not mutually assured anymore if the United States can hop on a rocket and get out, which Amit says would be able to be done so phenomenally because we'd have all this tech. It also just doesn't matter what the reason for this is. A ton of powers with nuclear weapons have said, if you try to colonize, we will fire, which means that it doesn't matter if we have the exact reason why. I'm not willing to take that chance because of Amit's hope that we'll be able to get to Mars and the average Joe will be able to get stuff. Amit says we don't care about the average Joe. Sorry, Joe, it looks like you're not going to get as much as you could. My argument's not that I don't care about you, but Amit said we can't solve your problems. And just because Amit says that he'll make an industry does not mean that your problems will be solved. solve because you'll likely need a ton of stuff that you don't have in order to get there. Amit doesn't resolve poverty, and even if he does, it's not worth having people's skin get burned off in a nuclear war. Amit says that we need to let those babies exist. First and foremost, you're not going to do it because all the money ends up being diversified. Amit says you should give money to everyone. No, we've read evidence that says that destroys the ability for the funding to be good because all these powers don't have enough to even get off the ground in the first place. Amit says, let those future babies live. Well, first and foremost, you sound like an anti-Planned Parenthood ad. Second, none of this solves anything. You don't let the babies live. They all die. Except, what if we invested in technology that stops the crisis that's going to kill us or pushes us to Mars now? We've read evidence that says that technology is phenomenal right now, more so than it's ever been. That's what we should put our time and energy into. So please, stay at home on Earth and put some money into this technology instead of amidst dreams, amidst hopes, and amidst fantasies. Yeah, answer the freak.
Good debate. Yeah, I just realized I didn't answer this debris thing.
Tons of debris.
So this debate turned into, it went from space colonization to like poverty to like who solves extinction or nuclear war, which is really funny because I think this debate went in a bunch of different directions, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I really liked your last speech. I like this Planned Parenthood reference. I thought that was pretty funny.
I mean, you kind of set it up.
I definitely said
we need a plan for those babies. I was like, what?
You sound like anti-Planned Parenthood.
What is he saying here?
Man, this is I think we're both in agreement that space colonization probably isn't the smartest thing when we have problems on Earth.
Nah, I'm sorry, Elon. It's a no for me, dog.
I just, you know, as much as I agree with it, I still am just like, well, we got to do something one day. But I think another argument you could have made would be like, yo, we got 4 billion years, let's chill out. Like, if we actually do have 4 billion years, why are we in a rush?
Well, I gave up my ability to say that as soon as I made arguments about climate change.
Yeah.
Because, like, you know, we don't have 4 billion years if I think the consensus is like 2030, so.
We got to have things done by 2030. Yeah, that's going to be scary. In 2030, you and me are going to be relatively young, and anyone's listening probably, so. If we can't... So I was having this dream, right?
Okay.
So I'm having this dream. I'm on a rooftop in Los Angeles. The sun is beautiful. It's amazing. And I kind of just remember saying in this dream, like, wow, this is a great thing to do in life. Like, I really remember saying that. And then I look up in the sky. And you know how you see the sun from far away? It's hard to look at it because it's so bright. Yeah. I see another ball of lava fire forming in the sky. And immediately I'm like, we're going to die. Immediately the entire dream switched to... It's time for extinction. Something's happening. It's time to die.
A quick question.
Yes.
Was that by any chance a cloud from a nuclear war that was created because we decided to colonize Mars?
To be honest, it looked like it could have. I mean, that's probably what it could have been. But it definitely did look like this cloud that you see in movies and stuff.
Yeah.
So this thing is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's forming bigger. And I'm getting close to it, and I'm willing. And for some reason, there's a bunch of people with me getting closer to it. I don't know where all these people came from, but I'm realizing like it's time to die. Like, it's kind of just like, it's literally like, imagine you're getting into a car crash, right?
It's time to die.
I've never been in this, but like, I got really close once. But you're getting into a car crash, and you know the car is going to hit you. Like, there's absolutely nothing you can do. You're just in the wrong intersection. It's going to happen. You kind of just, like, close your eyes a little bit, right? And, like, just hope it doesn't happen. I actually had a really scary instance, but I survived that. And then a crash happens, and you just hope you survive it. So I'm seeing this, I'm realizing it's going to engulf Earth because it's getting hotter and hotter, and I'm like, it's time to die. And as I'm getting sucked into it, the one thought I have is like, shit, I don't know if God is real. And at that one moment, I'm like, well, I'm about to find out. And then I wake up because you can't die in your dream for some reason, which I'm really curious to know more about.
The reason's actually really simple.
What is the reason?
So every dream is just a manifestation of an image in your mind because it's just your mind playing a series of images in tandem.
Right.
The reason why you can't die is because you have no referent point in your mind for what death looks like.
Oh.
So you literally...
So, like, if I were to, like, get hit in a car crash in a dream, my mind doesn't know what...
Yeah, your mind can concept... You've seen a car crash before. Your mind can conceptualize what it is. This is an interesting question because they've always asked... I think it's... I wondered... And I think I've seen this before. I've seen other people ask this question. But I wonder if that's true, what blind people see in dreams.
What blind people see in dreams.
But
Do they
still
have
conceptualizations of ideas?
But if they've
and
never
things.
seen anything, how can they visualize?
I mean, they can visualize things in their
Yeah, because they have like Braille and
Yeah.
stuff, right? And they see the world, they just don't
Right.
see it in the same way.
Yeah.
But I've always wondered.
Actually, wait, I'm confused. How do they visualize? Like, how do you see an apple if you've never seen an apple?
You can describe it. They can feel.
So you would construct your own image of an apple.
Right.
Yeah, you might not have the same image in your mind as somebody that can vividly see a Granny Smith, but
Right. You
Right.
can smell it still. You can hear it.
Yeah, I know
other
that. I was-
senses that allow you to paint a picture.
yeah. But apparently that's the reason why you can't die in your dreams. You
And I
don't know what that is.
I brought this up because this whole sort of nuclear war, we're all gonna die type of thing. Like I've had a dream about that before, and it's kind of just like really scary. And I'm kind of thinking, years from now in the future, what if we're on the planet and it's like 2030 and it's time to die, right? And the only reason we both agree that space colonization is stupid, but like, what if in that moment we're just like, fuck,
We wish we would have
we
gone.
wish we just had like something like that gave us hope to like survive the species.
I don't know. I think at that point, everyone's just gonna give up and be like, I think it's just.
But that's the whole point of
easy.
Interstellar. Have you seen that movie before?
I've
You
not.
should watch
I have
it.
not seen
The
Interstellar.
beauty of Interstellar was like the Earth was dying and they found a way to get out and they built a whole new species on a different planet. But it's really interesting. This whole death thing in your dream. So like that's why. So it has nothing to do with the adrenaline of death in a dream. It has everything to do with no reference point for death. Correct?
Well, that's what I've been.
'Cause I thought it's
that's
like
what
a
I've heard.
shock because
Yeah.
you like wake up and you're breathing heavy.
Mhm.
And I thought that literally wakes you up.
That's probably a part of it too.
It's probably a part of it, right?
Yeah, that's probably the reason you wake up. But like, why is it that you? So why is it, for example, that there's nobody that like? And that's another interesting question because maybe this has happened and we just don't know it. But what if somebody reached that point and they like died?
But I think that's what they say. That's how peaceful death happens.
Is that you? So
die
it's
in your
so
dream.
it's right, but. Does everyone so peaceful death is a death in a dream? So like
I've heard
so like
about
let's
that,
say
yes.
there's a car crash, your car crash, you almost hit and then you wake up in a jolt, right?
Right.
But like you're telling me that if somebody's like 90 years old and they're ready to go, they hit the car and they're gone,
And they die. And the argument
instead
is
of-
heaven is you in that dream going into heaven through that dream.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you a very important question, and I
Just
didn't.
dreaming for the rest of your life.
But that's the whole point of Inception. That was the whole point of that movie.
Yeah,
Kind of.
yeah, that was the one where they were like dream.
Because the
hopping.
argument is human consciousness in reality is not heaven, but heaven is within our minds or something, which is why when you die in your dream, it's like... This is why we need a technology to like go into people's heads when they're like about to die and shit.
I
Yeah.
kind of don't want to know.
I definitely want to know.
I don't wanna know.
I want to know. But what were we going to say just now?
Well, actually, no. Because this is another thing. It's very interesting. I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch Boy Meets World.
Yes.
And they had this episode where they did a dream study on one of the characters, Eric. And he's an idiot. So
Oh yeah, I remember.
he didn't register anything. In his dreams, he was dead. Like he flatlined when he went to sleep and had the most serene look on his face. And then they would wake him up, and when he woke up, he'd have brain function again. But
Yeah, I don't think you go into heaven or something because I'm not sure if that thing is really real. But it is interesting if you're dreaming and then you die. Like what reference do you have? Like,
Yeah, 'cause I've had
your
the-
dream. Your brain would just shut off, so there is no dream.
yeah,
Right?
I don't. Yeah.
It just goes black.
Okay, now here's the question that I was originally going to ask.
Yeah.
How did we get here?
We got here because I said nuclear. We were talking about. We both agree it's stupid to focus on space colonization.
Yes.
But at the point where you know you're gonna die, which triggered me to talk about this dream, there was that thought. My thought was like, "Yo, I wish I knew if there was."
Oh, yeah, you started talking about your
But
dream.
I was also like, "Yo, what if we had a way to not die right now? If something was engulfing us, what if we could get out of here?"
I would also. Is it weird that I would also just prefer not to think about it?
No, I mean it's such a horrible sort of existential thought. That's why I think people don't care about climate change. And I've started to really agree with this more, especially as I've listened to particularly a comedian. One of the guys is like Andrew Schulz, who's like, people don't care about climate change because we aren't willing to give up our own individual trips to Malibu to stop climate change. It's got me thinking like, yo, climate change really isn't something we could solve. Think about debate tournaments, right? The amount of people who travel across the country to go to a tournament just to talk about why climate change is good or bad release so much greenhouse gases to get there. And those
That's
people,
wild. We did have a whole topic about that.
and those people who are the most intellectual in terms of like their ability to think and stuff, and they're supposed to be the elite smart thinkers, the debate world intellectual like advisors or whatever, they're not giving up their fancy tournaments
But I
to
think
solve
we
climate change.
We live in a world where I don't think people our age want to make sacrifices, and
I think everyone. I don't think it's our age.
But I don't think in the 1950s, 1960s, that's how it was.
Well, they didn't have the ability to be selfish yet. Most of the tech didn't exist.
And that's a good point. I think we have the ability to be selfish.
I think we're so hyper consumerist.
If those baby boomers had like Ferraris, I'm pretty sure they'd be wasting
even
the tech
buying
too.
a Lamborghini, the amount of money, like let's say you have all the money, the amount of gas it gets, like 10 miles a gallon or something. Like, I don't know, bro. I don't think we care about climate change at all. And I'm happy that companies are investing in it, but I don't think we're gonna do it.
It's weird. There are some people that were like, question, do you think that the reason why we don't care about things like climate change involves the fact that there's so much information about climate? Like,
No. I think it's literally our day-to-day lives.
We just don't want to give up our day-to-day.
Yeah, I'm gonna drink out of that Coke bottle, and that plastic's gonna hurt because I want Coke today.
Right.
That's it.
Like, so many people have the choice to recycle and just don't. It's so easy to.
And look,
they just don't.
And the way to solve is, instead of having plastic straws, right? We have those paper straws.
Oh, those suck.
But those suck.
I
don't want to suck out of that paper straw. So guess what? I'm gonna use the plastic, and I don't care. Like, I really don't. And if you say I'm a bad person for that, then you go and do everything you get the right clothes. Go do everything eco-friendly, and then come back and say I suck. But you're not gonna do that.
I hate saying that, but those paper straws are the worst.
They taste like paper.
And it's such a small, minuscule inconvenience for us as human beings to save the freaking planet, but we're not gonna do it. That's why I think the climate change debate, I don't know. I just don't think it's relevant anymore. I really don't. Until we get to the point where the flooding happens, I don't know if it's...
I don't want to give up on it, though, because it's so important.
Yeah, but you're not willing to do anything for it. Like, you as an individual, you're not going to stop eating meat, right? Which is one of the... If you watch Cowspiracy on Netflix, that's one of the biggest ways to stop.
Right.
The rise of...
So here's the thing. Here's the thing about that, right? About the eating meat thing. Meat is delicious. And I'm sorry.
Imagine you said it like that. Here's the thing. I thought he was coming up with an argument. He's like...
Right, I was going to say something intellectual, and then I just... Meat is so good.
It is, bro. Like, I had a burger yesterday. Like, it was fire. Like,
dude, have you ever been... Imagine if barbecues were just cauliflower. I'm totally willing to give up the earth for
our
brisket.
producer in the back eats cauliflower rice like it's her religion.
I live
That is the most
cauliflower.
disgusting
it's
rice.
It's so good. It doesn't make you feel guilty because you feel like you
No,
eat
it is.
it all the
I
time.
tried it once and it was nasty.
I would... My taste buds would be telling me, ugh, guilty. Yeah. Execution.
I think this was a good debate. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. We will respond to every comment. And yeah, do you think we should focus on colonizing Mars, or should we take that resource and that money and focus on solving existential problems on Earth? We'll see you next time.
Thermonuclear war.